Hi, I'm Laurie Dobson, and this is Island Update. Today is December 2nd, Wednesday, 2020. I'm on the island of Great Cranberry up in Maine. And I have had some wonderful constructive criticism about the fact that I've got to be a little more organized in what I say and not ramble, and various things. Don't say, hold the camera steady, get better light. So this is my attempt. Hope it works. I do have something important, I think, to talk about today. And the implications of it are pretty enormous once I really let myself think about it. And knowing how things go, how things evolve, and how things develop over time when you see a certain trend happen in a downward situation in an abuse of power, I am concerned with what's going to happen with our islands. I think that we have a danger in having our town broken up, split apart. And I think it's going to be done through the rescue service. I believe that I need to speak about this because it's a town welfare issue. And from what I know, what my position was and what I've learned, it in a way makes me more of an authority to speak. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I have enough of the picture to be able to figure it out. So first thing is, I know that the EMT service as a whole is in trouble because towns have been in trouble, because towns haven't had money for decades, and the money that they do make is super minimal. Even if you're a paramedic, you can make, some towns you can make $14 to $16 an hour, and you can make more at Dunkin' Donuts. So, and you can get overtime. Towns, people that serve generally don't serve for the money. They serve because they want to be part of something that's important and helps their area, helps people. I especially saw that in Old Town, which is the poorest town in the state, and their service was, exceeded by nobody. Their commitment to their town and to each other and to the people. I believe that that's the purity of what EMT, emergency service, provides people. Is, they're there as fast as they can. They're made of people who, see a need in a community like I did and step forward. I saw no full-time EMTs on our island. Actually, we had one come in, somebody who works full-time off island in the medical field, and then is often off on evenings as well, and is also part of another service off island. So aside from that, we had nobody. We lost a bunch of people moving off island. When I offered to do it, the town paid for my training and my stay over. I had a lot of nights over and meals and gas and stuff like that. So I got paid a lot of money back for what I put into it. It was like $6,000. So I invested 3/4 of my life in it. It was important to do because I felt that we should have a service that was an emergency service. Okay, so here's why I'm doing the video. Since then, I've come to think about whether our having a service is going to be a liability going forward. For one thing, and I have been for speaking up in questioning masks in October, told that I was expelled from the service. So I'm no longer on the service because I violated some media policy where I wasn't allowed to exercise free speech. And that's just the truth. I have the media policy, which it's ridiculous. It says I can't watch porn either at night. It allows other people to do things and then they can get away with it because it's so nebulous and weird. But anyway, it gives the power to the director to just kick people off. And I haven't been before the select board or anything. I don't know if this thing is considered legal or not. All I know is this is one person taking power. So herein is the problem. We have an EMT person who has been given special dispensation to inject. This is a basic, by the way. This is not a paramedic, but the ability to inject something up somebody's nose. If there's a bleed that starts, if there's anything else, if there's any kind of reaction, that person is not given medical license in the state to practice anything beyond basic on our islands. We're not allowed to do that. The reason is that we are not a place that takes in services from anywhere else. We only deliver people. So we have to be kept at a basic level. We are not even if somebody did come onto our service and was a paramedic, they couldn't practice it through our very limited, basic kind of service. The other thing that's a joke is that we even call ourselves an emergency service. What we have on the island that are the most important things anybody can have anywhere is an automatic defibrillator, an AED device, automatic electronic defibrillator, which we have in several locations on the island. One is in the Ladies' Aid, and can be used by anybody. You can grab it, it's in the bathroom. The others are also available. The other thing that's most important to know is how to stop a bleed. So and CPR. So with your basic emergency understanding of CPR and an AED and stopping a bleed, which is basically you put pressure on a bleed. You put pressure on it. If you have to tourniquet it, you do it above the joint, above the injury. You put pressure on a bleed. If it's, and then you obviously, the main, after all of that is you try to get the person off the island as soon as humanly possible. You get somebody with a boat, go screaming to somebody fast, and somebody on island with the means to a boat and the means to get off quickly. And we know who those people are on Great Cranberry. And we have them, and they've served us in the past because we had a woman who was an important woman in our community who had an accident, was on her floor in a pool of blood. And it was declined by the person asking them to take her over. When they called, they said that the person who's family member of this person wasn't able to get to the other island to pick the EMTs up to bring them over. That was the story that I heard directly from the people here, and that there was a concern about it, and eventually it was made clear to this island that the fastest way to do it would be for us to take the person rather than fetching them from another town. So that's not, and this was not a case where I was able to intervene, and so with our island not able to actively help and dependent on other islands to provide the help, it's not considered an emergency. It's not an emergency that anybody else could not learn to do here and do just as effectively. There are other things that we can do, as EMTs. We can splint. We can. We do have a certain amount of use of the drug bag, but minimal kind of things able to be used. Obviously, no narcotics. So our island is very, very limited. There's no monitoring the heart monitor or anything. It does take a while. Life flight takes a while to get from our island over to Bangor, where the pad is, and it's not ideal. It's really not. Once you get somebody in a boat from our island over to Northeast, either to get on the ambulance if the ambulance has been called and not called off, which the director here can do if it's in her decision making to call off to say that the person has refused to call, and that means they don't get an ambulance at the other side either. You have to somehow think of that and arrange that, or else you have to find a way to get the person yourself off the dock over Northeast to the hospital, where they may switch them to the other hospital. So all in all, you're not talking about exactly an emergency response. You're talking about a quick response. And I think a decent nurses service here would be in good stead if it was on island. The reason that I don't think the EMT service is in great shape right now is because it's become heavily privatized. So there's a lot of rules and a lot of regulations, a lot of things that you can't do. I can do much, much less as an EMT than I can as a good Samaritan, knowing what I know, because of the fear of liability. There's also other issues with the service. There's all kinds of issues of mental. It's 10 times the amount of suicides in a rescue service as any other. You're dealing with people that have terrible addiction issues. Just because they're in a rescue service does not mean that they're fit to help you in an emergency necessarily. These are people that are under extreme pressure, and the limitations on them if not from their town, so that their accreditation can stay up, so they can get the Medicare money to help them pay for things that are big ticket items. state money, excuse me, for those things if we don't have a good accreditation, number system. For any number of reasons, we stand to lose our service at any point. So to have it, you have to have state-of-the-art equipment too. Not any of which you necessarily need. You've got the old-fashioned stethoscope, and you can take a blood pressure. You can take a pulse. You can listen to breathing. You can do any number of the things that you need to do to sort of identify something simple without the need of the ambulance. However, we do have an ambulance. We just got a brand new fire truck, and I question why, because we had our white one. Our white one can go everywhere, and it works adequately. But we have a brand new one. Everybody's very proud of it. But is it going to be ours for long? So the other issue is that because now EMTs have been tasked with taking these drugs and dispensing them, because they're drugs, who knows what's on the end of that particular type of curette that's going up, swab that's going up your nose. And I've seen pictures of some of these swabs that have little hooks on the ends of them so they can take a DNA sample. If there's a DNA database going forward, if there's a way to tell that somebody's had a test, even though that test is only good until the next person you get exposed to, which makes it ridiculous. The other thing is they're going to cost money. So I don't know how much money we've spent already getting our 87. Maybe it was a gift, so-called gift, but is it really a gift? Because it's taking time away from our EMT service. It's making it's requiring that the director fill in all this paperwork, all this work to show that we're still, doing our job. It's lining the town up to say, yes, whatever you need to do this. It's setting it up so that that's the same person who would likely dispense vaccines. It gives a person enormous power of discretion, doesn't it? So if you've got a certain number of vaccines, are you going to say you get one, you don't? We're going to go by the state's mandates or the federal government's, where we're going to hit minority people first, and then people that are considered mentally incapacitated. That's what I read last night. How are you going to decide who gets these things? When do they work? Are they a good idea? Do they implant anything into our bodies? Does it mean that if you have that masks are a part of a requirement, that if you have one, you don't need a mask, or you just do, but your mask will have some insignia on it? It's getting to be more and more like, the ability to perform medical things on people was supposed to be created to be it was a law, an international law against doing that at the Nuremberg, doing medical experiments on people. And these are medical experiments. So that breaks a Nuremberg law, a principle that was very deeply held. That's how we climbed out of Nazism, and we tried to create a new and a better world. The other thing that we did was that we said no medical experimenting, but also, rounding people up, putting little tags on their bodies, like a yellow star, an identification marker that's clearly visible. And the whole point is to be visible so that you have people policing people. Because in order to get all these people in our country to do everything, how are you going to do that? What means? Well, there's an ideal means to use. It's called the EMT service. They already have armored trucks. You can't see inside them. They can carry any number of weapons. They can go into any town. Nobody suspects them. Carrying what? The little agents of support, of salvation, or whatever. What if there's something in certain batches that they're experimenting on, and certain people will actually get either a placebo effect or worse? Do we even know that we're not part of a controlled experiment? So the answer is no. And the reality is no. And do we trust our government? Well, look at what the government just did. I mean, the hiring of Biden's cabinet, it should be the clue to anybody that ever thought that there would be any change in government. There's no change. There's going to be no change in the policies of the government. You might see a few more crumbs thrown out at certain demographics, certain more numbers of movies and seemingly sympathetic things happening. But anything substantial, any real changes to the policies of wars or to incarceration, will you really see that? That's a good question, because that's where the war makers make their money, and the Democrats are as tapped in on that war vein as anybody else. They're just as much war whores as any other party, as any other person, the Democratic Party. And I've seen that from running as a Democrat for several times, and I know it from the inside out, and I'm ashamed of it now. It used to be a party that was anti-war. You could protest within the party as an anti-war person in 2002. No more. Anyway, so the other issue, that was a ramble. Okay. But you should know these things because you should have the basis for doubt. And if you don't have the basis for doubting your government, you're starting from back here, and you need to be here right now. You need to be ramped up because the things that are going to be happening to you, you're not going to understand otherwise. So I see the service being used. This is my final minute here. The service is being used because people are gullible, because the people that are doing it are enormously have goodwill, because they want people to be safe, like I did at the very beginning of this thing when I tried to put out, a warning about this right from the start in early March, late February, and I got suspended for a month off the service for talking about it. And later, the director said she agreed with me and didn't have a problem with it, but people got pissed off because I was complaining to the selectmen about getting on the ball, about getting something done, and people were afraid that it would ruin the economy, that people wouldn't come, summer people wouldn't come, that I defended them horribly, and I was warding them off from coming and making our islands desperate for economy, and for the summer population to return. So they didn't want anybody speaking against anything. So I got suspended for a month. Then a media policy comes in and says you can't do this, that, and the other thing. Well, I believe in exercising your rights is more important than anything. But when you cull the herd, in other words, when you take people out that you think are going to be problems, and they are already targeting these people over in Britain, they're looking at the ones who are protesting. There's going to be some crackdowns on anti-masker protesting people. You're gonna not only do that inside your own country here. That's going to happen, and it already is, because I've already been subjected to it. But you're also going to get an increasing amount of people that are good people, thinking they're doing the right thing. And when I saw that happening, I started protesting the masks, because I know there's another agenda, and the agenda that drives the mask may end up making mask wearing and this virus itself a lot more lethal because of the ramifications, because of the things that have happened to address it or to profit off of it. The things that could actually increase people's mortality in so many ways. And it already is, if you look at the numbers of the ancillary deaths due to diseases of despair or diseases brought on by hypoxia or any number of things, claustrophobia, lack of vision field, inability to communicate with people, inability to understand accidents in general, people's stress level, which causes them to be killed from the inside and kills relationships on the outside, which destabilizes families, destabilizes towns, inability to function in their world, so they can't recharge their batteries. You can't get out there and join up with people, give them a smile, give them a hug, give them goodwill. Can't open your store and be a conduit for that kind of a thing. So these are things that really kill countries. But for us to be, as EMTs, deliverers of the potential death by driving our vehicles in, not allowing the towns to use us for EMT services, but to consume us in the tracing, the testing, the vaccinations, and maybe more. Maybe they'll infiltrate us with. I've heard there's talk of getting of combining the military with the dispensation. So we'll have people riding along in our ambulances to make sure you comply. That is not this country's freedom message. That is not freedom. It's also not HIPAA. You don't have patient confidentiality privileges, so you can use the information which is on EMT's database, which is extremely vulnerable to being abused. And once you get the military in there, you get people in there on the machines, and before you know it, it's to a certain point where you have only certain people have ability to access what happens to people, what's their records, what's their this, what's their that. And granted, our cell phones can do any number of things of damage, but to turn over the service to nefarious purposes is not why I signed up. And I'm fighting this because I don't know what's coming down the road. I do know that, you have the Island Institute handing out drugs. And who are they to hand out drugs? They're just some foundation place, that touts itself as a big salvation but they want to know what's going on in all the cities. So they have these little boards with all the towns talking to them. They've got a bead on what's going on inside of us. So this Island Institute thing, very questionable. And then also the EMT services with their use, their tap into the hospitals, major tap in, all kinds of connections there. You've got a service that's run by the military. You've got a military virus and a military response. Are you going to say something? Are you going to be make me be the sole voice in the wilderness saying this is not a good idea? But maybe you don't realize, but now you do. If you listen to me up until 20 and a half minutes. So it's on you to start looking into this thing. Stay tuned. Thank you. Bye.